Good afternoon in Belgium and good morning in Mexico. Welcome to our webinar, Opportunities in the Mexican Water Sector. I am Wim van Kouteren and since 6 years the head of the Office of Flanders Investment and Trade in Mexico City. And I'm really delighted to see that there is considerable interest in Flanders and Belgium in the subject of our webinar today. And thank you all for participating. I just want to remind you the program of today. I will start, and after my intervention, Mr. José Tello will give you a presentation on opportunities in the Mexican water sector for foreign companies. Our second presenter from Mexico is Mr. Mario Lopez, who in his presentation will focus on water legislation, water supply and sanitation, water policy, and integrated water resources management. The closing remarks will be given by Mr. Dirk Halet, Strategic Coordinator of VLAKWA VITO. And I already want to express my gratitude to the 3 speakers of today. Thank you very much for your collaboration. Before we dive into the water sector of Mexico, I wanted to present to you some economic facts about Mexico and some recent economic trends. So you better understand in which economic environment investment projects in the Mexican water sector take place. And then in the second part, I want to explain to you why we are organizing this event and why we are focusing on this sector. Mexico has one of the biggest economies in the world. It is now the 14th largest economy worldwide. According to the World Bank, it is considered an upper middle income country, just like countries like Brazil, China, Thailand, Turkey, and South Africa. Now in this slide, you can see some strengths and weaknesses about the Mexican economy. The fact that Mexico is so close to the US is definitely a plus. For example, technology that is being developed in the US find its way quickly to Mexico. Just to give you an example, Mexico was one of the first countries outside the US where the Uber app was launched already back in 2013. Furthermore, Mexico receives each year millions of tourists from the US. And Mexicans who live in the US also send each year billions of dollars to families and friends in Mexico, and in this way support the Mexican economy. Now, since 1994, Mexico has a free trade agreement with the US and Canada, which was first called NAFTA, and since a couple of years has been replaced by USMCA, the US-Mexico-Canada agreement. Now, NAFTA and USMCA have been very beneficial for Mexico, since Mexico has been able to attract a lot of industrial investment. And companies have opted for Mexico because of its relative low labor cost, its relative good infrastructure, and of course, because it offers duty-free access to the North American market. And Mexico is now the #1 foreign trade partner for the US. Now, the Mexican economy also faces some challenges, and the Mexican society as a whole. Some areas in Mexico are plagued by criminality and insecurity. If you as a company own physical assets in the country, you definitely need a security strategy. And you can also see that Mexico has a narrow tax base because a lot of the economy is informal. Now, what about the European Union and Mexico trade relations? Well, Belgium and the European Union, we also have a free trade agreement with Mexico that is already existing since the year 2000. So this means that almost all industrial and technical products from Europe and Belgium, which are, for example, used in the water sector, can be imported in Mexico duty-free. Now, in 2018, Mexico and the European Union reached an agreement for an update of the current trade agreement. and the gradual elimination of all remaining import duties. But unfortunately, 5 years have passed now since the agreement was announced, and unfortunately, the ratification process still has to start. And then, of course, the updated agreement has to be ratified by all the EU member states and by Mexico. So I believe it will still take a couple of years before this updated agreement enters into force. Now, what are the economic prospects for Mexico? Well, I believe they are quite positive. Mexico has clearly emerged as one of the winners of the US-China conflict. For many years, China was the main foreign trading partner for the US, but since last year, Mexico has overtaken this position. And why? Well, because Mexico has attracted a lot of nearshoring investments. Nearshoring is, of course, the trend by which companies want to have their supply chain closer to their headquarters and closer to their customer base. And as an example, Tesla recently announced that it will build its first factory near the city of Monterrey in the state of Nuevo León. That is the state which is below Texas, so close to the US. So the economic growth prospects of Mexico, they are definitely better than, for example, for the euro area. Last year, this year, and next year, the economic growth rate, you can see, will be significantly higher than in the euro area, according to the IMF. Mexico also has been able to attract a lot of foreign and domestic investment because of its prudent fiscal policy and its stable currency. In this graph, you can see that during the last couple of years, the Mexican peso has been considerably appreciating compared to the euro. So for Mexican importers and Mexican clients, it is cheaper to import products and technology from Europe than a couple of years ago. How does Credendo, the Belgian credit insurance company, assesses the risks of international trade transactions and investments in Mexico? Well, you can see that the short-term political risk is very low. The medium and long-term risk is considered to be 3, which is the same level as countries like India and Saudi Arabia. The business environment risk is D, which is moderate, but this is the same level than, for example, Belgium. And then the risk of currency inconvertibility and the risk of transfer restrictions is 3, which is the same level as, for example, India, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. So, in spite of some risks, long-term prospects for Mexico are positive. And some studies, like, for example, this one from PwC, predict that by the year 2050, Mexico will be part of the 10th largest economies in the world. So the long-term economic prospects for Mexico are definitely positive. I now want to give you some explanations on why we are focusing on the water sector in Mexico. Well, water is scarce in Mexico, and the country has difficulties in meeting the demand for water from the ever-growing Mexican population, the agricultural sector, and the industry in Mexico. Mexico almost has no rivers or important natural lakes, and in many parts of the country, rainfall is insufficient. And as you can see on this map, the water risk in a large part of the country is considered as extremely high, especially in the central and the northern part of the country. Mexico also suffers from a change in the climate patterns. According to Mexico's drought monitor, a large part of the country currently suffers from extreme or exceptional drought. Furthermore, the Mexican authorities are actively trying to obtain new technologies to increase the water availability. And as an illustration, I show you here an email that the government of the state of Nuevo León, which is home to the second largest metropolitan area of Mexico, Monterrey, they contacted our office of Flanders Investment and Trade last year spontaneously because they informed us of the alarming situation of the water sector in their state. And they requested us technical assistance on behalf of companies who can offer technology to tackle water crisis. So the Mexican authorities are definitely interested in new technologies that can help to alleviate the water crisis that is currently affecting many Mexican states. And there are 32 states in Mexico. Another reason that we want to focus on this sector is the fact that other European countries, and especially our northern neighbor, the Netherlands, are already during years actively promoting their solutions to tackle challenges in the water sector in Mexico. And it's both the public and the private sector from the Netherlands who are very active here in Mexico. Since 2016, Dutch private company RAI Amsterdam organizes the most important water technology expo and conference in Mexico called Aquatech Mexico. This is a private initiative, but it is strongly supported by the government of the Netherlands. And here you can see the current Dutch ambassador in Mexico who is opening the Dutch pavilion at Aquatech this year. At Aquatech, the Netherlands, they present each year their solutions to tackle water challenges in Mexico. And this year, they presented more than 10 companies. You can see the names of the companies there below. Another country that is very attractive in promoting its water technologies in Mexico is the United States, which each year has a country pavilion at Aquatech. Apart from the Netherlands and the US, Israel also promotes its solutions in Mexico because Israel, just like large parts of Mexico, is a country with desert-like conditions. At Aquatech, the German state of Bavaria also had a booth. So you can see that many foreign countries and many European countries are offering their solutions. Now, what about Belgium or Flanders? Well, for example, at Aquatech, there was one company from Wallonia, Eloy Water, that presented its solutions through a presentation via its official Mexican imported distributor, which is SSTP Water Technologies. And apart from that, there is already one company from Flanders that has executed water treatment projects for food and beverage companies, industry companies here in Mexico. But we believe there are many more opportunities, and hence this webinar. So in case of interest, if you want any further info, we invite you to contact our office, myself and my two colleagues, Mariana and Annette. Thank you. Okay, I will now, I want to introduce our speakers from Mexico. The first speaker is Mr. José Tello. He is Director Agua of the Mexican consultancy company Centro de Estudios e Investigación en Asuntos Públicos, and he is based in Mexico City. And in September of this year, Mr. José Tello, he was a speaker at the Aquatech conference, and he participated in the panel that had the title Government, Industry and Society Collaboration Models. And also the second title was Water as the Axis of Collaboration Between Sectors and Countries. So Mr. Tello, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wim. Let me share my presentation. Okay, thank you again for this invitation, and thanks to all the participants. So today I'm going to share. This is what I'm going to try to explain and share with you. Well, the title of the presentation, as you know, it's opportunities in the Mexican market sector for foreign companies. So in order to get to that point, to the opportunities for your companies in the Mexican market, first of all, I will complement what Mr. Bimbam Kauter has been explaining, more the context, the reality of Mexico, or the different realities of the country and the water management. Then I will present some facts and ideas around the water uses and challenges in the water sector, financing and water pricing, which I know was a topic of interest for most of the participants. And finally, to talk a little bit about collaboration schemes and the actual opportunities to collaborate and to enter into the Mexican market. And of course, a round of conclusions from these 4 topics. So then, as we have been already learning, Mexico, it's a huge country, 64 times the size of Belgium, 126 million inhabitants. Our economy, our GDP is basically 66% of the GDP comes from the tertiary sector, and the population concentrates in urban metropolitan areas, although we have thousands of small, medium localities all over the country. So let's go one level deeper. So we saw the country as a general territory, but inside that huge territory, we have 32 states. And here is where you can start seeing a country with many contrasts, with multiple regional and local realities, and of course inequalities. Only 12 states out of these 32 concentrates around 70% of the Mexican GDP, and only 11 metropolitan areas concentrates 41% of the total population. And we can see a big divide, broad divide between the north and the south of Mexico. The north as the engine of the economic development, concentrates 83% of the economy, of the GDP, and the south with smaller population and also lower level of economic development. But the story doesn't end there. We can go one level further, which is the municipal level. So we have 2,000 and almost 500 municipalities all over the country. And here is when we can start learning from the water, how water is managed and administered in the country. So we have in the constitution, the political constitution of Mexico, of course, we have water, access to water and sanitation as a human right. Water is a public good in Mexico. The water is property of the nation, and that actually gives the structure basically of how this is, or how the resource is managed in Mexico. So we have the highest authority of water is called CONAGUA. It's part of the executive branch, and basically CONAGUA administers, regulates. It's also a technical body to manage or water resources, groundwater and superficial water. Mexico is divided in 13 hydrological administrative regions. And this is in the let's say, the broader of federal structure of water administration. But at the same time, the Constitution of Mexico assigns the responsibility of providing the service to population of drinking water, drainage, sewage, wastewater treatment to these municipal authorities. So we have a high number of water utilities linked to municipal governments, and basically all of them, or the 90% of them, are public organizations, and only a few private water utilities. In the middle, between the federal government and the municipal provision of the service, we have intermediate bodies such as state water commissions and basin organizations. We basically enable the coordination between the different levels of government and society and the different stakeholders participating in the sector. Okay, then let's go to water uses and challenges. Yes, Mexico, it's basically the territory, the most of the territory, it's desertic, arid or semi-arid place. We have a huge problem in overexploited aquifers. And we have, in this regard, a problem of water scarcity. Yes, it is evident. And as we have, we learned from Mr. Van Couteren's presentation, we have all these, let's say, positive economic projections in the future. And of course, that's a concern because all this future economic development will need water to actually happen. So this is a crucial moment to probably understand in a different way how the system of water governance and water management needs to be prepared in order to face this future. Agriculture is the main water use in Mexico, 77%, and their public supply, industry, and energy production. In terms of coverage of water, potable water supply, sewage, disinfection, it seems that we are we have made a lot of progress in the previous decades, and water treatment is still a little bit behind. But let me tell you that, of course, this is a good indicator of how all these services are covered in Mexico. But behind these indicators or these numbers, there are a lot of different considerations and problems that need to be understood in a contextual way. Who is using? Who are the massive users of water? I have this example. We have within the biggest concessionaries of water in Mexico, we have food and beverage industry, mining, hospitality, manufacturing, transport, paper, and chemical products. Where is agriculture in this picture? Well, agriculture is not there, even though I have just said it is the main water consumer. However, water for agriculture is exempt of payment in the structure of concessions. So only 13% of the concessionaries of basically wells to supply water to their activities are the only ones that make this payment for the use of water in Mexico. Challenges. We have all kinds of challenges, as you probably can start learning. But let's go to the main ones. So, of course, we still have a big challenge in providing proper access to water and sanitation to around 5 to 8 million people in the country. We have a big gap in information, lack of knowledge on mass water uses and relation to economic activities and productions. We basically don't know exactly who is using the water and for what objectives. I think this is a worldwide issue, a worldwide problem, but yeah, Mexico is not the exception. We have a lot of pressure in our aquifers and basins. The lack of infrastructure and technology. For example, 40 to 60% of the network, distribution network water, presents leaks, or in other terms, 40 to 60% of the water that go through this network is lost in leaks. 70% of the treatment plants are obsolete. We have weak commercial systems. Although we have a professional sector and a very good professionals working on water utilities and in the different administrative bodies, that's also an opportunity to strengthen the human resources and management of administrative bodies of water. Climate change, vulnerability of floods and drought, that's an increasing issue in Mexico. Pollution of water and water quality. Around 70% of rivers are polluted in Mexico. Of course, water governance. This is a very political, water is a very political issue, and a lot of social and political stakeholders are involved in the administration and setting the objectives of how to administer water in the country. We have also a lack of, have a lot of ideas and projects in all different contexts, states, municipalities, but there is an opportunity as well to better design and structure in these projects. And last, but very important, lack of financial resources to deal with these challenges. Just to give you a fact, only a few water utilities out of those almost 3,000 water utilities are not broke, are working are not broken in red numbers. Okay, continuing with this issue of financing and water pricing. Okay, this is complex, quite complex issue, but I'm going to go quickly and try to be clear on the main elements of financing and water pricing. So these examples or this information comes from urban water utilities. So basically, there are 5 ways in which water utilities get their resources, their financial resources. Of course, the first one is the payment from consumers of the services. This is a decentralized system, so each state and even each municipality have their own rules and their own procedures to establish these costs and tariffs of water. Taxes, the federal government partially finances the service, and also the state and municipal governments participate in this financing to water utilities. We have a different kind of cost paid by utilities, which is called water rights, and it's by the concept of use of water and wastewater discharge. These rights are collected by CONAGUA in the federal government and then are transferred or returned to the utilities in order to finance their hydraulic infrastructure. Some utilities, particularly in the metropolitan area of Mexico City, also buy water, we call it bulk water supply, also to the CONAGUA, to the Federal Administration of Water. And some water utilities get some transfers from external resources to complement their budgets. Here you can see how it's divided, the different operative costs of water utilities in order to pay for operation and investments. I want to stress out that this financial structure, it's let's say only 33% of the operative costs comes from all these financial sources. But what is important here is that there are other economic costs that are not measured in this, let's say, formal structuring of the cost, because of the different economic pressures that consumers have to pay because of lack of proper drainage networks, lack of wastewater treatment, and lack of constant water supply. So this is just an idea of how the formal and informal market of water finance or numbers is structured. Here we can see how income and expenses are distributed. So we have, of course, the price of water and subsidies. That's in conclusion how water utilities gets their money to operate, and they have to expend, or the expenditure is divided in personal, energy, maintenance, investment. The bottom line of this section is that water utilities get only 64% of their financial requirements from what they can obtain for the payment for the actual services. And the rest, 36%, they are dependent on government subsidies. In terms of financing of infrastructure and operations, we have basically two main sources. The most important one, and currently in this current administration or government in Mexico, is being focused on fiscal resources. So basically the government is investing directly public resources, fiscal resources, in a few projects, priority projects, 12 projects to be precise, which takes around 80% of the total budget. Of course, there are some other programs, federal programs, which are not related to infrastructure, but more to operations, modernization of water utilities, increasing the capacity of wastewater treatment. And the other source, which has not been used in this administration, but which is actually very, or could be really important, it's public-partner partnerships. So we have the National Bank of Public Works and Services, which is in charge or to promote these potential schemes of collaboration. Unfortunately, so far, in these previous 5 years, we only have had one PPP project in this scheme. Okay, let's go now very quickly to the types of or how the water pricing is calculated. Basically, this is an average drinking water consumption in cubic meters per intake and per month, and it takes into account socioeconomic level and climate variations. So basically, you will have a formula which takes into account the range of consumption and the type of use. We have four types of use: domestic, industrial, commercial, and public services. Here you can see an example from one state. This is a rate per cubic meter in consumption of 30 cubic meters per month. And this includes water, sanitation, and sewage. And you will see in this figure the variations of cost in water related to the type of water use. The average water pricing, you can see here how these are the 32 states of Mexico, and they have different rates. In average, 0.9 euro per cubic meter in a scheme of 30 meter cubics consumption per month. So in terms of what is required to solve challenges in the water sector in Mexico, and also thinking on what your companies, your technologies, or the solutions you provide. Of course, the technology is there. Also, as it has been mentioned, a lot of or different countries have interest in presenting these solutions to the needs and requirements in Mexico. So actually, the technology is out there, but the main problem or the objective will be to understand how this technology can be adopted to the particular conditions in Mexico and how to implement. So basically, we see the approach to this question in terms of a system of solutions where you can take into account the technology, the policies, and politics, of course, of water, and the social sector. And this is, of course, beyond the management of water itself, and beyond the governance of water itself, but it's more a system to integrate these two branches or let's say, universes of solutions in a integrated system. Of course, there are a lot of efforts. We have been also participating in this kind of efforts where you have the route of collaborating between companies, B2B collaboration, companies of Mexico and other countries. You have the route of collaboration between governments, G2G, and also what is interesting is how these two different types of collaborations helps each other or reinforces each other. Governments and private sector collaborating together and creating strategies to entering the different markets of water in Mexico. And of course, to integrate society and community in all these efforts is completely essential and necessary. Academia and knowledge institutions are also, as you know, very, very important. And that's also a potential way of collaborating between countries, between Mexico and other countries, between universities, between knowledge institutions, that reinforces this scheme or different ways of, let's say, landing the collaboration in the sector. Very quickly, just to go to key aspects. Of course, understanding the local system, political, social, institutional, is always the best and most important way of generating opportunities to participate in the Mexican market. Betting on collaboration, as I just mentioned, this is a multi-level approach. Adapting innovation to local context. Of course, you are aware of this, but technology has to be adapted and prove how they can actually work to solve the requirements in Mexico. And as I presented before, not in Mexico as a general place, but in Mexico as many different areas and local realities. More research and information, of course, that's a gap that we think it's crucial to solve. Differentiate between public and commercial strategies. If you are thinking about G2G or more in a private strategies to supply your solutions. Of course, these two requires different approaches. Support projects, feasibility of projects, pilot and scalability. That's, I think, a good idea to enter and try your solutions in Mexico. Very important, as I just mentioned, there is a big pressure on the public budget, on the fiscal budget in Mexico to finance water projects. So bringing finance, bringing money to the table from initial stage of projects, it's a good idea. And in this regard, it's important to collaborate and establish commitments between governments, multilateral banking, private sector, NGOs, etc., all the stakeholders to find additional sources of financing for projects. And this is not short-term strategy. I can tell you from what we have been seeing and working in the previous years, all the companies, foreign companies that really want to be successful in Mexico need a long-term, medium to long-term strategy in order to succeed. So thank you very much, and please let me know if there is any question or comment.
Thank you very much, Jose, for this very interesting presentation. I now want to introduce our second speaker from Mexico. Our second speaker is Mr. Mario Lopez Perez. He is Senior Water Resources Consultant and currently consultant for the World Bank. He has more than 40 years of experience in the Mexican and also in the international water sector. And at the Aquatech conference in September in Mexico City, Mr. Lopez was a moderator at the session with the title Water Availability in the Context of Climate Change. And he also presented a session that had the title Urban Drought, Lessons Learned. So please, Mr. Lopez, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Wim. Thank you to all the audience there in Belgium and in Flanders. Let me share my screen, please. I'm very grateful of presenting some of my insights related to the water sector in Mexico. Now you can see my screen. Now you can see it, the full screen. Okay? Well, as Wim explained at the beginning of the session, my talk will be related to water legislation, water supply and sanitation, water policy, integrated water resources management in Mexico. Some of the things were already addressed by my colleague Jose, but I want to stress some of them, which really enlightens the way Mexico handles water and enlightens the possibility of plenty, a wide window of opportunity for collaboration in Mexico. Mexico is a huge country, almost 2 million square kilometers. My colleague also expressed that 20% of the towns have less than 2,500 inhabitants. And almost 200,000 towns have less than 250 inhabitants. This gives you an idea of the great rurality in Mexico and the dispersion of the communities. Mexico, if you see it in general terms, you have average water availability per person. However, as my colleague presented, there are huge differences between the central and north part of Mexico with the southeastern part of Mexico. The legal foundation of the water management in Mexico is based in the Mexican Constitution. All the rivers, all the lakes, all the springs, all the groundwater belongs to the nation. And this property, it is inalienable and imprescriptible. This means that the Mexican government doesn't lose the property in any case. However, for the water users to use the water resource, the executive, the federal executive, the president, through the National Water Commission of Mexico, CONAGUA, grants concessions. And also, this means that if you want to have a water right, you need to ask for permission to drill a well or to build a dam, and the Mexican Water Commission will give you the authorization just in case there is water availability. My colleague also presented that most of the central and northern part of Mexico's basins and aquifers are overexploited, overallocated, and in some particular cases, just like Mexico City, just like Monterrey, just like Guadalajara, the three main cities in our country, the groundwater is depleted. And the effect of this depletion is been affecting the infrastructure, the water supply, the highways, the bridges, and even the buildings are being affected by this depletion, this subsidence that is taking place in Mexico City. And in the central part of the called Bajío, which is Querétaro, Guanajuato, and a part of Jalisco and Michoacán. Also, many dams in Mexico were built in the beginning of the past century. So those dams are beginning to have increased risk of failure due to aging. Most of the water courses in Mexico are being polluted because of weak water treatment, not only by industrial units and facilities, but also by cities, and also the agricultural pollution, which is huge in Mexico. Even though the national water law establishes the protection of the wetlands, the enforcement is weak. Also, another issue is the high water and climate change risk and vulnerability. Mexico is ordinarily recurring recurrently hit by hurricanes on both sides from the Atlantic and the Pacific, which brings humidity, but also brings some damages. And the effect of climate change in Mexico is being described or characterized in terms of more hurricanes, intense hurricanes, quick developing hurricanes, severe storms, increasing droughts. This has been seen in the past 10 years, 15 years, and also an issue of policy that it is very important since we have transboundary aquifers with Guatemala, Belize, and the US, is that most of our aquifers and basins are not fully studied. We don't have updated information related to how much water is being pumped, what is the recharge, and how many wells do we have that, and the amount of water that they extract. Agriculture, as was presented by my colleague, is the biggest water user in Mexico. However, it is the efficiency on which they use water, it is very low. It is less than 40%. And there are huge water losses in most of our water utilities. Even in Mexico City and in Guadalajara, the losses account for more than 40%. Also, my colleague expresses the issue of the governance. There has been, in the past 10 years or less, there has been a huge decrease in institutional capacities at the national level, at the state level, and at the local level. And this includes the water utilities. So there is a need for capacity building in that. And also he expressed that the issue of the low budget for the water sector, including research. The national water law regulates how the water is being managed in Mexico. The purpose of the law is to regulate the use of the water, the distribution, the allocation, the preservation of the quality and quantity. And we see in the past 10 years or less, a huge decrease in enforcement. This shows you how the water is being managed, which are the institution and the relationship at an international level, at the national level, at the basin level, and the participation at the state, local, municipal, and NGOs. It is not my purpose to explain all the detail of this. You will have the presentation. But what I want to highlight from this is that, as my colleague presented, water management, even though the national water establishes that it should be decentralized, and legally it is, quote to quote, decentralized, there is a huge centralization of the decisions that have been taking place everywhere. Even though we do have basin councils, even though we do have basin organizations, even though we do have participation of water users and representatives, state governments, municipalities, water utilities, all of them participate. However, the critical key decisions have been taking place in the headquarters of CONAGUA. The Mexican water policy comes directly from the National Development Plan. Every 6 years, there's a change in federal government, and every 6 years, there is a National Development Plan is being issued. And the National Water Plan 2020-2024, that it's been issued every 6 years. For the moment, for the present administration, there have 4 objectives, and this gives you the vision of the Mexican water policy. First, the huge need to increase and to implement the human right to water and to sanitation, to reduce the big gap among the cities and the rurality, the peri-urban and the rural communities, which do not have the same coverage, and if they do have coverage, they don't have water in that pipes. Also, the need to ensure that the water that it is being in those pipes have the enough quality for safe drinking. And again, to address all the future needs to meet the future demands. So these are the main 4 objectives of the main water plan. And you can elaborate on that. And in particular, for drinking water and sanitation sector, human right is violated. It is not fully accomplished or complied. Rural and peri-urban communities receive least attention. Most of the attention, most of the budget, most of the institutional capacity goes directly to the cities and less to the peri-urban and rural communities. Even though the water national law establishes that water supply have a priority among the different water uses, there are no water reserves to guarantee quantity and quality of water for water supply, even though there is the possibility in the water law to do that. And again, the pollution in many courses of national rivers face huge levels of pollution, particularly some biochemical and chemical parameters do not meet the national standard. And this is due because the water utilities do not operate properly, or even some of them do not have water treatment infrastructure. And when they do have this treatment infrastructure, they do not put budget enough to operate properly. And this is why the main reason for that is that the tariff, the prices of water doesn't account for the operation and maintenance. Those tariffs are subsidized, and the water utilities, most of them are running with red numbers. These are the different types of water utilities in Mexico. There are county public centralized. There are only water supply departments. This accounts for more of the counties in Mexico, or the municipalities. There is a county public decentralized. The huge cities, Zapal in León, in Ciudad Juárez, Comapa, in Reynosa, Capama, in Aguascalientes, Oapas, in Morelia. The big cities, they do have a decentralized water utility. There are also intermunicipal decentralized. Guadalajara is an example of that. Mexico City is one of that. San Luis Potosí is another example. And Monterrey is also. State public decentralized. So according to the Mexican Water Constitution, this is the obligation of the county to provide the water services and the sanitation service. However, in some states, the state government takes control over the water supply and sanitation. Why? Because the utility, the counties do not have the potential or the capacity to provide the good services. And that's the reason why in Monterrey, in Nuevo León, in Querétaro, in Chihuahua, in Tijuana, and in Quintana Roo, the state provides the service in agreement with the county. There are also private-public mixed PPPs in Saltillo, but also we do have private companies running some of the water utilities, and these are in the Riviera Maya, in Cancún, Isla Mujeres, and also in Los Cabos, in the Baja California Peninsula. So there are many possibilities how to operate a water utility in Mexico, and except for the state public decentralized, the hybrid and private, the other ones do face major budget problems. As compared to the water supply and sanitation sector, the agricultural sector has huge low efficiency in the use of water irrigation. Some irrigation districts and some small scale irrigation units lose 60 to 70% of the water that they extract or they take from dams or from the rivers. There is a high percentage, very high percentage of low-income producers without agricultural insurance. So there are two big, huge windows of opportunity to improve Mexican agriculture. The extraction of the groundwater. Most of the wells in Mexico run directly by the farmers, extract more water than the authorization that the Mexican Water Commission has granted to them. And this brings to overexploitations and problems in balanced aquifers. There are also some illegal extraction of groundwater in areas with very low law enforcement. And also in the irrigation districts in the northwest and northeast part of Mexico, there is a high leasing of water and plots in irrigation. So the farmers lend the water and the land to farmers that come from elsewhere or to companies to produce products, and most of those products have been for the US exportation or for Japan exportation or for the European Union exportation. Which are the main challenges of the water sector in Mexico? The first one is that there is a need to position the water management as a strategic and national security issue. Even though the national water law establishes the water as strategic and national security issue, this is not the fact. This is not the truth. This is not the reality. So there is a need to improve on that, to build on that. Also, to guarantee human right to water and sanitation and healthy water for the environment. To comply the SDGs, supply, sanitation, disaster prevention, protection, cross-border cooperation, all the different SDGs, Mexico is lagging behind. And also to achieve gender equality, transparency, and accountability. Even though, as I said, the national water establishes that the management should be decentralized and deconcentrated, this is not happening in reality. So there's a huge need to improve on that, to work on that, to help on that, to build capacity on that. And also, the aging infrastructure needs to be rehabilitated, restored, maintained, or tear apart and built again. So there is a need, not only in terms of dams, but also in aqueducts, but also in pipelines, within the water utilities, very aged water treatment plants and water plants as well. So there's a huge need of investment in Mexico. And also, as my colleague already said, the research, innovation, and technological development in Mexico is lagging behind. Even though the National Development Plan establishes that at least 1% of the GDP should be for scientific research and investigation, this is not happening. So there is a need of more technology, even though, as Wim said, we import very quickly the technology and the innovation from the US. But this needs to be tropicalized, to be ad hoc updated to the Mexican conditions. And also, the promotion of decentralization of scientific and technological activities, and the promotion of multi-institutional projects of research. There's a huge gap in Mexico. Federal, state, municipal governments, and private initiatives must invest more in technological research, innovation, and development. This is a big gap that needs to be filled. And for the moment, as we already said, we have collaboration in terms of cooperation from the German institutions, from the Netherlands, from the US, from Spain, from France. And it would be good that Belgium could be another key player in the Mexican water sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mario, for this very interesting presentation as well. Congratulations. Now, the closing remarks will be given by Engineer Dirk Hallet, who is Strategic Coordinator of the Flanders Knowledge Center Water, VLAKWA VITO. VLAKWA facilitates in Flanders the collaboration between entrepreneurs, researchers, and governments in light of accelerating innovation and implementation of water solution. Please, Mr. Halet, can I invite you to give you your remarks?
Okay, thank you, Wim. Since time is also running up, I made my presentation a little bit shorter, and I want to play into two topics that were addressed. First of all, in response to the presence of different countries in Mexico to make their to showcase their expertise in the field of water, and secondly, based on the chat that I saw on where are there possible funding schemes for doing these types of projects. So I will share some slides in this perspective very briefly, so that there's also some time for Q&A. So first of all, in the field of showcasing our expertise, that was also mentioned last week by our Prime Minister, Alexander De Croo, who stated that it's really time to showcase our expertise in the field of water. And
Dirk,
in this yes.
Can I just interrupt you? Can you switch to presenter mode, because now we see your end. Yeah, this is better. Thank you.
Yeah. So as I said, our Prime Minister really urges us to showcase our expertise on water on the international stage. And in this perspective, it's nice to know for the people present here today that several public and private actors defined a common branding to showcase what Flanders stands for in the field of water expertise. I will not go through the whole story today, but the branding is Fluid Crew Water Solutions with a Flemish twist, which you can also use as an entry point then to showcase your expertise. And if you would like to have more information or you want to join forces in this joint initiative, you can contact us at hello@fluidcrew.be or visit the website www.fluidcrew.be. So, and we also use this that's for example at the International Water Association Congress, that all the expertise is brought together in a common stand where we set up different initiatives and talks. Secondly, and I think this is more interestingly, and I took a slide from the presentation of Mr. Tello, who states that what are key aspects to enter the market in Mexico, where it's important to adapt innovation to the local context, and that also the use of demonstration pilot schemes is interesting to enter that market. And in that perspective, it's worthwhile to know that there is the GSTIC Climate Adaptation Program, which is funded by the government of Flanders and GSTIC, the Global Science, Technology and Innovation Community, which gives support for projects that focus on demonstration as well as on dissemination and capacity building. And where one of the main criteria is that a Flemish organization takes the lead. And so also Mexico is one of the countries where these types of projects can be done. So if you want to be kept up to date about a new call coming up, so there were already 2 calls, you can subscribe on the newsletter so that you're informed when this next call will be launched. On the website, you can also find an overview of the projects that are being funded now, and also in the field of water and sanitation, and how big the budget of the demonstration project was and how much it was funded. And as also mentioned by Mr. Tello, and these type of demonstration projects, they allow for us to valorize our knowledge and expertise and allow market penetration. It also identifies new possibilities of collaboration. It's not we are going to solve their problems. It's often and mostly with a joint efforts and collaboration with local partners that we can try to solve the issues. And thirdly, it's helping you also to make the innovations or solutions more robust. If you can test them in another context, sometimes even more extreme contexts, that really also stimulates further innovation and so on. So this is a quick stop sharing. This as a quick input from my side, and so that there is a common branding strategy. And second of all, that there from the Flemish part, there is this GSTIC action program, which can provide financial means for setting up demonstration projects in Mexico. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dirk, for this closing remarks, and also mentioning the interesting opportunities of GSTIC. Hopefully, they can be applied in Mexico. As far as I know, no GSTIC project has been realized yet in Mexico. So we are looking forward to that possibility. I now want to open the floor for questions. I think there has been some questions in the chat. I don't know if my colleague Ralph can treat those questions. Ralph is our Science and Technology Director for Climate Tech at Flanders Investment and Trade in the Americas.
I'm here, Wim. Thank you. Firstly, I want to thank, of course, our speakers, our guests, both Jose and Mario, and of course, Dirk and Wim for organizing today's event. I've been listening very intensely, and I was looking at the questions, and I think a number of people came to the same conclusion. I think there's a very real need and maybe opportunities in the Mexican market for water as a source, as a resource. The question I had, and I see that coming back in the other questions, is there a market, and if there is a market, how to address it as a technology player, maybe a smaller technology player from a foreign market? How do you break into this market and actually, given some of the challenges that you address, like nobody's really paying in the public sector the real cost of water? If you're a technology player, you want to plug into that those utility companies. Is there money to be made, and how do you go about? You go directly, you go with a private player, or do you stick to some of these commercial utility schemes like the Veolia one? So I think that will be maybe a first question for both speakers. If you could shed some light on the actual opportunities, how to break into this market and help Mexico address those needs. Maybe Jose, you want to?
Sure, Ralph. Thank you. Well, what I can tell you is that the market, as I mentioned, there is not a strictly unique market for water, right? So what you have is multiple market niches or possibilities, and taking into account that, again, it's very specific, very contextual. So I think for medium and small companies, then there is a big opportunity, but the couple of main ideas. The first one is that in some way, when companies from other countries are looking to participate in any of these kind of niches or markets, in a way, they have to help that particular market to develop. The market is not ready or mature, so as you probably do in other countries in Europe, where you just go and sell your product. Here, you have to think if you are ready or willing to work previously to prepare actually that market to be ready for your solution. I mean, it's a little bit, probably is not orthodox from what you see in other countries, but if you have been working in Latin America or Africa, Russia, probably you are aware of this. And the second thing is, as I mentioned as well, just two more things. One is it requires time. No, it's not going to happen necessarily in the short run, but you probably need a strategy to try that, to piloting, to start like going step by step in a process of a few years. And the final, which you also mentioned, it's how you can create your alliances with as many as possible key stakeholders. And in that sense, as also I mentioned, it's always better if you have that alliances with the private sector, with the support of your government, going and talking to the authorities or water utilities, finding resources, combining resources. So yeah, I think the approach it's something in general terms, making alliances to do that, to implement your strategy.
Thank you. I'll come to you, Mario. I just I'll quickly summarize and I'll bring it over to you, because I think from the World Bank perspective, I want to pick your brain on that aspect as well. Jose, you mentioned the piloting. I think important was also one of the questions in the chat, and I think Dirk, you mentioned we have a potential scheme that could help in financing or help some of our companies go to the Mexican markets with some of their pilots. So yes, Mario, please, your insights, and then definitely if you could make a link also to maybe potentially third international schemes like World Bank, or is there an opportunity? Is Mexico open to that, and what scale?
Well, it really depends what kind of markets are you going to approach, because it is different if you are looking at the water supply and sanitation sector. The way of getting into it is different than if you are trying to work with farmers, the agriculture in Mexico. On both, there are a huge window of opportunities. There's no point in saying that. I mean, if you want to go into the water and sanitation sector, with all the technology that you can provide, you need to look at the legal aspect of who is the regulator, the National Water Commission, who runs the water supply, if it is, as I presented, the state, the county, different options, different types, and also how gonna you approach with the private sector or directly with the state government or with the county government. In any case, if you want to get some matching of your funding with the federal budget, you need to go through CONAGUA. This is mandatory. However, if you want to work in the agricultural sector, if you want to provide knowledge, information for improving water efficiency, you can go directly to the Users Association or through the state governments. You don't need to go through the National Water Commission. If you want to go through the Water Commission, you will go through the irrigation districts. But if you want to improve and sell technology, drip irrigation, trickle irrigation, micro irrigation, or whatever, you can go directly to the state. There are no regulations at all. So it really depends on the sector. If you want to match, if you want to work with Belgian companies that are already in Mexico and you want to help them improving the water use, the circular economy, you need to go through the ministry, Secretaría, the Ministry of Economy. So it is different the way how to approach according to the different sectors. This is one point. The other point is IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank, and the Corporación Andina de Fomento, CAF. These three development banks work in Mexico. They do have offices, huge offices. And Mexico, depending on the sector, is willing to accept the help of those institutions. If you see the water, recently, this federal administration, not the past, this federal administration doesn't want the help of these big institutions to improve the performance of the water utilities. But if you go to the agricultural sector, they are open to do that. So it is different. The policy that the Mexican federal government applies to the budget coming, to the investment coming from these big institutions. And these institutions do have great experience in working with the federal government in the past. However, this present administration, there has been a restriction because of the new policies that this Mexican president has in place. And this brings to me to one of the questions in the chat, that it is why Constellation Brands have been blocked. Let me explain you a little bit. This is not a technical issue. Why? There is an assessment done by the Mexican Water Technology Institute that establishes that in terms of water risk, it was safe to establish there the brewer company. There is not a technical issue on that. There's an assessment that establishes that. Why? I don't want to go into detail, but in summary, the brewery bought water rights and gave those water rights to the water utility. And according to the Baja California state law, the water utility would give them the water that it's been handed over by the company. So there is no technical issue. It was more a political issue. And that's why the company, the brewer company, is now established in Veracruz, because someone sold the president the idea that, they were selling beer. Beer is almost water. If there's no water in the Baja California Peninsula, and there is lots of water in Veracruz, so the brewery should be established there. That was the thinking of those people who advised the president. Wrong advice. Why? Because it is not only a matter of water allocation or water availability. The irrigation district has very low efficiency in Mexicali Valley, very low efficiency. Most of those lands are being lent to US farmers. US farmers grow crops in Mexico, in Mexicali, and sell the products to the US. So if you reduce the losses of water in irrigation, you can have enough water to comply with the water right for the people, but also you comply with giving water to the industry. So it is not a matter of technology. It is not a matter of water availability. It's a matter of politics. Okay. I don't know if I answered the question.
Thank you. Well, Mario, I have to disagree that beer is like water. Maybe if you talk about Heineken, yes, but our Belgian beer, I would really not want to compare it to water. Which I mean, I think, yes, you answered that question in the chat. I was thinking we didn't really talk much about the needs, industrial needs and private sector needs. Is there there's strict regulation when it comes to wastewater treatment, end of pipe, and if they definitely need industrial process water, etc. Is that in a particular interest maybe for our companies to break into the Mexican market? Or more of the industrial water needs sector, away from the utility. I'm sure, Jose.
¿Quieres continuar, Mario?
No, go on. I'm answering the question on the top 3 water utilities on the chat.
Okay. Okay, yeah, well, probably also linking this question, Ralph, with the situation of Constellation Brands. I think there is, of course, a big potential of establishing particular strategies to working with the private sector. We have global companies, huge companies working in Mexico. Most of them, as Constellation Brands actually, are already implementing sustainable solutions in their processes. Then we have also very big companies, let's say, under these global huge giants, which are also very, very important, which are in the process of adopting these technologies. And then medium, small, micro companies, all of them are in process of adopting technology, but also because Mario for sure can give you more insights in this part of regulation, but we have in place, it's not a new norm, but it's a new version of the norm in terms of the discharges of industry into national water bodies. It's stricter, and all of the companies are compliant to address these new levels, these new standards. So of course, for example, regulation and policy creates these new opportunities for technologies in order to, as I mentioned, to comply. You know, all these companies need to comply with these quality standards, which are stricter. So we are in that process. There is, of course, a potential opportunity, and also previous to that, I think the problem was and still is that the majority of our urban treatment plants are not working. So again, here you can also kind of link the sector of wastewater treatment between urban treatment and industrial treatment, and those kind of alliances of links in collaboration, probably through one technology or process, that also could be, or is interesting to explore in terms of entering to particular markets.
Okay, thank you. Mario, not sure if you want to pick up on that?
Yes. I was answering, and I want to link my response to one of the questions that is on the chat. Are there already cases of effluent reuse in Mexican industry? Well, the big companies, the big industries from the US and multinational, they follow the Alliance for Water Stewardship Principles, and they are implementing it in Mexico. However, smaller industries, they do need help in order to implement circular economy that it is now as a fashion right now in Mexico. The water utilities are beginning to develop, to work on technologies in terms of circular economy as well. Why? Because there is a huge conflict in terms of getting new water sources, because there's a big competition among the utilities, big utilities and small towns, and the people do not allow to take the water from one place to go to other of aqueducts. So they are thinking about the reuse and to develop direct or indirect potable reuse. So the water treatment should be at that level that can be applied once again and supplied to the population, just like they do in Windhoek, in Namibia, or what they do in the Netherlands, or what they do in the US. And so the Mexican water utilities are beginning to develop reuse for water supply. And this should be piloted because the Mexican standard right now do not allow direct potable reuse, but allows indirect potable reuse. But this will change in time because it is more efficient in terms of economy to do it directly and to mix the water, to blend the water from a fresh source, from treated, reused water. And this is also coming in the minds of the companies. There is a huge wave in Mexico among the different industries, the different companies, to begin to invest in protecting the basins, in protecting the natural infrastructure in order to secure the water that are being pumped by those industries. And the first phase is reuse, recirculate the water that is being extracted by the industry, and then also look at the context where they extract the water from the rivers, from the aquifers, and so on. However, there's a huge need of capacity building on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The help and also funding for that kinds of investments or piloting is important to be acknowledged and to be addressed. Over to you.
Thank you. No, I think we hear you loud and clear. Plenty of opportunities also for piloting and for scaling up, for testing out new products and technologies. I think we have a lot of expertise in not Dirk's club, but under the umbrella of the Fluid crew and other companies. So we definitely follow up with that. I think in the interest of time, Wim, I'll hand it back to you and maybe wrap it up. I think we're reaching the 1 hour time gap.
Yes, I don't know if apart from the questions that have been asked via the chat, if there are any other questions from our audience. Or I don't know if all the questions in the chat have been addressed. If there is a question that has not been addressed, maybe the person who asked the question can ask the question again if he thinks if it has not been addressed yet. No, I just wanted to make a final remark. The private sector, the employers organization of Mexico, which is called the Consejo Coordinador Empresarial, they recently announced that major manufacturing companies will be investing $0.5 billion, so $500 million in equipment and services for industrial water treatment plants between 2023 and 2025. But to meet the new effluent discharge standards. But this is, of course, the major manufacturing companies. Mario also mentioned that, yeah, the problem sometimes is with the mid-size and the smaller manufacturing companies to comply. I think the international companies that are operating in Mexico, they meet international standards, and that's why they are doing and announcing these investments. The challenge is more, I believe, with the mid-size and smaller industrial companies.
Indeed.
Okay, so with that, I want to close this webinar. Thank you all. Thank you for all the participants. Thank you for all the speakers. I think it was a very interesting introduction to the opportunities and the challenges in the water sector in Mexico. And I hope this will be the start of a new trade relationships in this sector between Flanders and Mexico. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day.
Thank you. Good day, everybody. Good afternoon.